Welcome to another edition of Hollywood Balls with me, Geordie Pete Redding. Great guest for you today. What a career. Stellar career as both a player and a manager, by the way. But we started asking about former Man City legend Paul Simpson, of how life was at Bristol City and how they were coping with an absolutely extraordinary fixture list at the start of this season.
It worked out at something like, well, originally it was 7 games in 21 days. And then Sky decided to put our 7th game on a Friday night. So it's 7 games in 20 days it's worked out. But listen, I had 4 years working for the FA where we used to get 2 games every month or from November to March, we didn't get any games at all. So I'm enjoying being back in the thick of it, and it's an exciting time.
We're going to touch on that, but before we do, I mean, as you say, the games are all coming thick and fast. You've had a bit of it looked like a positive start, and then you played Borough, but according to you and the gaffer, you didn't really turn up. So you'll be looking to put that to rights this weekend against Swansea, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we had first 4 games of the season, we had 4 wins. We couldn't have asked for a better start, and. Since we started with the players on, I think it was August the 11th, they've been different class. Their consistency levels have been excellent. And then at the weekend, we went to Barnsley, who hadn't won a game, had only got 1 goal from a penalty. And we were looking at the team and wondering how they were struggling, because they've got some good players. And they gave us some real problems in the first half, and we struggled, and we were 1-0 down. We managed to recover after half time, and we were 2-1 up, and then we got done with a decision at the end of the game that could have gone either way. I mean, it was a collision on the edge of the box that it looks to me like our player didn't leave our 18-yard box and their player didn't go into our 18-yard box. It was just strange how it happened. The referee wasn't in a great position, but he gave a penalty, and you think, well, fair enough, somewhere along the season, everybody tells us it'll level itself out, but I'm still waiting to see whether it does or not. So we ended up getting a draw out of that one. But then on Tuesday night against Middlesbrough, they're a good side. They've got good individual players. And we all know what Neil Warnock's teams do. They come and they make it really difficult. And even with good players and well organised, they spoiled the game. They made it really difficult. They take the time over throw-ins and goal kicks. And unfortunately, the referee wasn't strong enough to deal with it. He allowed it to go. And it always makes me laugh. They wait until the 94th minute to go and book the goalkeeper for time wasting, when if they nip it in the bud early, the game should have a bit of a flow. But Middlesbrough deserved to win on the night. We weren't good enough. And as I said, since August the 11th, the levels of consistency have been really good from our lads. But on that night, as a group, we let ourselves down, and we need to make sure we put it right this weekend against Swansea.
Fingers crossed. I'm going to take you a bit back down memory lane, where it all started. We said we had an old mate of yours on the show last week, John Beresford, who was with you at but Billy McNeil, who was the gaffer at the time, he put you both out to Finn Harps in Ireland. Do you think that loan experience provided a catalyst for the form that you found at City when you came back, because you started banging goals in?
Yeah, it certainly helped me. I mean, I've got to say, it was a bit of a shock to the system when Billy McNeil called me in and told me. I mean, Bez was a little bit unfortunate, really, because that was Bez's first season at the football club, and I'd had the year before where I'd made my debut after about a month of being in the club. So I was only 16. I made my debut in the first team, played 3 or 4 games, and then I had a really tough time after that. I got an injury I got an ankle injury that kept me out for about 6 or 7 weeks, and then my first game back, I did my other ankle, and I was out for about another 6 or 7 weeks, and then when I came back, I just didn't play very well. I was nothing like the player I was at the start of the season, and it was nobody's fault. It was just me. I wasn't good enough. Got to the end of the season, the management changed. We just got relegated from the old First Division down to League Two, and Billy McNeil came in, and he signed loads and loads of Scottish fellas, Derek Parlane, Jim Tolmie, lots and lots of forward players. And he just said, look, I've got too many forwards in the club. And he wanted me and Jamie Hoyland, who was my digs partner, to go over to Finn Harps. And the weekend we were going, Jamie got ill. So Billy asked Bez to go. And we went over. We were playing pre-season games. We had 3 really good games against Man City, Celtic, and Southampton for Finn Harp. So I really fancied the idea of doing that and maybe playing against City and showing what I could do, and maybe Billy might take me back. But I obviously didn't do enough in the game because he agreed to let me stay out for another couple of months. And Bez decided that he wanted to go back to City. He didn't feel it was the right place for him to be. So I ended up staying there for a few months. And I've got to say, I really enjoyed the experience. It was a real growing up thing for me. I was living in a little place called Ballybuffet in County Donegal. I was living I had a little bungalow next to the manager called Patsy McGowan. Patsy was a driving instructor, so he was teaching me to drive as well. So I was 2 birds with 1 stone. It worked out a treat for me. But I just got to a point where they were only training part-time. So we'd train 1 night a week and play on a Sunday. And I had a great life. I was playing golf, 2 rounds of golf every day, doing a little bit of training on my own, and then training 1 night a week. And I just got to this point where I thought, I've got a bit of a problem here, because I could end up just getting lost in the League of Ireland.
Sure.
And it was a strange one, because I was, at the time, I was earning £75 a week as a first year pro, and Finn Harps were paying me 200 punts a week, which worked out, I think, is about 160 quid. It worked out in the conversion from punts. But I was due to get 10,000 punts bonus if I stayed for the full 3 months. And I had a bit of a decision. I didn't have any money, obviously, at the time, earning 75 quid a week. And I thought, bloody hell, if I can just put it up with it for 1 more month, I've got a nice little bonus coming. But I just knew for my own career, I needed to go back. So I rung Billy McNeil one day and I said, listen, Gaffer, I'm getting really worried that I'm going to get lost in this league. I think I've got more to offer. And to be fair to him, he just said, Simo, just go and speak to Patsy and get the next flight back and come back tomorrow. So I ended up going back. I got straight into the team. We played Sheffield United away on a midweek game, and I got in the team that night. I came on as a sub. And anybody who knows me as a footballer knows I wasn't a tackler, knows I wasn't aggressive. And I came on, we were defending a throw-in on our left-hand side, and the ball got through over my head, and I turned, it went over my head into the striker's feet, and I turned and went to tackle from the front and went over the top on the guy, and I got a yellow card for it. And I was like, oh, Christ, I was lucky there. So from the free kick, the ball got cleared. I went to go and close, and I smashed somebody again. And I've no idea what it was. I was so close to getting red carded, and luckily Paul Power, who was captain, said, "Oh, come on, ref. He's a winger. He hasn't got a clue how to tackle. Give him a chance." And luckily the referee let me off. And that was the only game I played to start with. I never got another game. Billy obviously thought I was too close to getting red carded. And then right at the end of the season, I can't say I was playing well. It's just, I always say there's things in football. You obviously have to have a level of ability to be a footballer.
Sure.
But I also think you need to be lucky. You've got to have some luck. And we were playing a reserve game. I was coming towards the end of the season. The first team had 9 games left. I was playing in a reserve game, and Bob Stokoe was the Carlisle manager. Obviously, you're aware of Bob, a Newcastle legend.
Yeah.
And Bob was the Carlisle manager, and he came to watch me on this Tuesday night in a reserve game. And I was really poor, really bad, up to half-time, didn't play well. Bob Stokoe had seen enough. He went and picked up another game in the Northwest on his way up to Carlisle. And second half, I did all right. I think I scored 2 goals in the second half. And then we had 2 players, Gordon Smith and Clive Wilson, both got ill that week. And we were basically left with no left-sided midfielder in the club. So I had to play because I was the only one. And I got in the first team, played the last 9 games, scored 6 goals. We got promoted. And I'm sure it's been said many times, the rest is history. But that was just that little bit of luck that I got. Luck that I was rubbish in the first half, but okay in the second half, that my Man City career suddenly took off from that point.
You turned it around, and I remember as a fan, and I watched Newcastle in the '80s, so I saw a lot of you of City and you guys because you were in the same division, but you always had goals in you, and you had a rich vein of form as well in front of goal for both Oxford and Derby. Did you enjoy your times there?
I loved it. Yeah, Oxford was brilliant for me, because I was at that point at City where I'd played 100 and odd games for Man City in the first team, whatever it was. And we had a manager, Mel Machin, who come in, and just like you get in football, he didn't like the way I played, or he didn't think I could fit into his system, his style of play. And I was, although I played quite a lot of games in my first season under him, it was always, if anything went wrong. I mean, I remember we went on a run of about 23 games unbeaten, and then we played a game at home, and our goalkeeper got sent off, and I forget, somebody went in goals, and we ended up losing the game. So we'd had a really good run, 23 games. Then we go down to 10 men and lose, and he dropped me for the next game, which it always seemed to be that way, that it was me. And I know in football, wingers are always the easy one to be left out, but I just didn't really feel it was getting a fair crack of it. So the next season, he brought Nigel Gleghorn in to play that position. Didn't think I was going to get a look in. And I went to see the manager one day and said, "Listen, I just don't know where I stand. Have I got a chance here?" And he was like, "Yeah." Mel Machin said, "Yeah, definitely part of my plans. I want you here. I can see you playing a part." And the next day, his assistant called me, Jimmy Frizzell, and said, "We've accepted an offer from Oxford for you. Go and speak to Brian Horton."
Yeah.
So I went down there. And I got to say, Brian Horton made me feel $1 million. He talked about my career. He said he'd tried to sign me when he was at Hull. He thought I could be a big part of their team and all this sort of stuff. And Oxford were in sort of what is now the Championship at the time. And I just thought, for the sake of me, I need to go and play football. I need to go and be a regular in a side. I'd gone from being a regular at Man City, an England under-21 international, to being a little bit of a part player. And although I still had a long contract, a couple of years left on my contract at City, I want to play football. I always had this thing in my mind. I remember when I first made my debut, Tony Buck had a go at me because I was training with the first team one day. I was only 16 and I was with the first team, and John Bond was the manager, and we'd finished the session. He said, "Right, lads, everybody back to the stadium, go and get showered, get rested up for the game." So as I was walking off, Tony Buck was my youth team coach, and Bucky shouted, "Oi, come here." So I was like, yeah, what is it, Skip? He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going back to the ground." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the gaffer's told us we've got to go back and get rested for the game." He went, "Oh, you're big time now, are you?" He said, "You think you've made it?" I was like, No, not at all. I haven't. I said, "I'm just doing what the manager said." He said, "No, you haven't made it, son." He said, "You've played 2 games." He said, "You can be lucky and play 10 games, lucky in 20 games." He said, "When you've played 100 games, that's when you can call yourself a footballer." And that stuck in my head all the time. It was always, right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to play as many games as I can in my career. And when I retired, somebody told me I played 808 games in my career. And I think back and think, I think I've shown Tony Buck that I had something about me, and it stuck with me all the time. And I don't resent Tony Buck for saying it, because it was actually a really important lesson for me. And that, in a way, that was what made me want to leave City, because I just knew I had to go and play football. And at Oxford, I played loads and loads of games, got the move to Derby, played lots of games at Derby, scored goals, loved my time at both the football clubs. Great time footballing wise, but also family wise as well. I've been really lucky that my wife Jackie has wanted to move to wherever we've gone. So we moved to Oxford, and our first 2 boys were born in Oxford. Joe and Jake were born there, and then we moved to Derby, and Dominic was born in Derby. So, they're really big parts. And I'm not sure if football supporters realise that players do actually commit to the clubs. I always get this thing like, the club means nothing to you. Well, no, it does. For that period of time that you're there, if I'm there for 2 years, that club's the only club that bothers me. I'm not bothered about any. People say, "Who do you support?" I'm like, well, I don't really support anybody, because when I'm playing for Oxford or for Derby or for Wolves, that's my team. I'm going to do everything to make sure it's right for them. And again, going back to what I said earlier, I'm not aggressive. I'm not a tackler, but I still wanted to do well. Just because I didn't go and kick people and want to fight the world, I still wanted to do well for that club for that period of time that I was there.
You mentioned there just briefly the England under-21 scored in that famous Toulon tournament, which we used to look forward to as fans, because it was a heck of a stage as well. That England side had some real stars in it. Along with yourself, there was Nigel Clough and Tim Flowers, and there was one Paul Gascoigne, wasn't there?
Gaza, yeah, he was. He was an unbelievable talent. I roomed with Gaza for 16 days for that Toulon tournament.
But it
So
felt like
we
16
met.
years, did it?
Oh, wow. I think I aged. I went as an under 21 and I think I was like a senior by the end of it. It was just, but he was such a top bloke, a real top fella. He had an absolute heart of gold. And I've got to say, it breaks my heart to see that the troubles that he's had. He's had a horrible time, starting from when he picked up that knee injury. But he is a top bloke. But ability wise, he was incredible. It really was. I think about the games that we played. I remember I scored one goal for England under 21s, and I actually still to this day say it should be two. We were playing against Tunisia the first game, and we had a free kick wide on the right, and it was one of them where you sort of go in, well, it's a left-footed in-swinger. This is what it needs to be. And Gaza went, Simo, I'm taking it. I'm like, no, Gaza, it needs a left foot. It needs an in-swing. He said, no, I'm going to score. I'm like, what? From here? You no chance. So anyway, he said, no, go on, follow it in. Get in the box and follow it in. So he's took this free kick and he's whipped it round the outside the wall to the near post. And the goalkeeper's dived and he's got onto it. And I've actually just slid in and took the ball and the goalkeeper into the net. Now, my version of the story is that it wasn't over the line, but the history books and Gaza say it was over the line. So it went down as Paul Gascoigne's, probably Gaza's first England goal, I would imagine. But to this day, I still think it was mine. But then I scored the second goal. But he was a great fella. But even then, you could see that he had a bit of craziness in him. And I had to sort of, I was going to say mother him, but is that the right thing? So I'd probably have to father him throughout the 16 days, where he's leaning over the balcony, throwing grapes down at the FA committee members who were down on a table below and stuff. And he was good fun, but he was such a talented footballer. He really was.
Amazing. Speaking of managing people, you entered the world of management yourself, quite a few spells as a player manager, which interests me. Because that seems to be sort of a dying art. You used to see a lot of player managers back in the day. Is it easier being a player manager, do you think, than having to stand on the touchline?
I think the big difference is when you're a player manager, you actually have an influence during the game, because really during the game, as a manager on the sideline, you can't really do anything about it. You can shout and scream, but my experience has shown me that sometimes they don't actually hear you or can't get the message. And other times they pretend they've heard you, but are not really listening to you. They just make a gesture that they've heard you just to pacify you. But as a player manager, you can actually do something about it. But the thing that I found difficult as a player manager, particularly when I was at Rochdale, my first player manager job, I took it on. I had absolutely no management experience. So I knew I was going to make mistakes. I knew that I was going to have to learn on the job. And I was told by the directors I would get all the help, but I got absolutely zero help from the directors. So naturally, I made mistakes in that role. I did make some mistakes. But what I found, I started the season in the team. And although I think I was probably about 36 maybe at the time, 35, 36. I was still actually doing okay at League Two level. I could still sort of hold my own without being able to do 10,000, 11,000 meters every game. I was still doing okay. But I got to a point in about October or November when I was playing in a game and we were struggling. And I just got the feeling that everybody in the team was looking to me and going, come on, you're the manager. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
But while I was playing, I couldn't put them in the different brackets of being a player and being a manager. I was a player. I suppose I wasn't football intelligent enough to be able to do those both roles and identify where we were going wrong on the pitch and play my own game. I was struggling with that. So I made a decision to take myself out of the team to see whether or not the other players would sort of step up to the mark a little bit. Right. So that was something that I recognized, that others don't take on responsibility because they think you should be able to do everything. And the truth was, as a player manager, I wasn't actually good enough to do both of those things. I could do my own job. And then when I come out the side, I was able to manage. And then so I left and I learned a load of things at Rochdale. I left the club in a decent position, but again, I sort of had my first I suppose my first lesson of management, when I got to the end of the season, they'd been talking to me for months about a new 2-year contract, or saying that the new contract would be done and I would get it when everything calmed down. And we had a bad run at the end of the season. I got to a point where they called me in and said, look, there's a new 2-year contract for you, but you're going to have to change your staff. So my staff at the time there was me as the manager. I had Jamie Hoyland, my best mate, as my assistant, who'd been the youth team coach there before, and I brought him up to do that. I brought Colin Greenall to do the youth team, and I had a physio working with me. And that was it. We didn't have anything. I had a part-time goalkeeping coach, sorry. So they said, we need to change your staff. So I said, well, go on and explain how. And they said, well, we want you to either, you can sack Jamie and we'll help you bring an assistant in, or you can sack Colin Greenall, Jamie can go back to be youth coach, and we'll help you bring an assistant. So basically they're saying they didn't think me and Jamie worked well together. So I said, well, no, it's my choice. I picked my assistant manager. And they said, well, your choice is you either accept it and we'll give you a new 2-year contract, or you leave. So I said, right, give me 24 hours, had a think, spoke to Jamie and Colin, and I said to both of them, look, I've got to make a decision here. One of you two might be getting sacked tomorrow. I apologise, but this is what it's about. If I think it's the right thing, then one of you will be going. And they both were, I'm sure they were both raging, but they both were decent about it and understood. But when I actually thought about it, and I had a chat with Jackie about it and spoke, talked it through, I just thought, no, I have to be strong enough to make this call, that it's my decision who the assistant is. And I ended up walking away, but it was a first lesson about actually being quite strong about what you feel is the right thing. So I did that. Thankfully, I got an offer to go to Carlisle as a player, and it was sort of a bit of a swan song, really. I'm thinking, right, well, I've come full circle here. I've left Carlisle in 1982. I'm coming back as a 36-year-old to finish my career as a player. Unfortunately for Roddy Collins, he got the sack early, and then I ended up getting the job and taking it on. And again, I was a player manager, but this time I was injured. I'd done my knee while I was, really stupid thing, jogging over to do a spinning class with the players, and my knee locked and I had a cartilage operation. And I was able to focus on being a manager rather than worrying about being fit and ready to play.
As well,
yeah. I was able to manage the football club, which, I'll be honest, it needed it, because it was in desperate trouble, the football club. We had there was problems. We had a really bad group of players. We had issues going on in the background. We were working under CVA for a long while. It was a proper mess, but wow, as an education of management, it was probably the best place I could have ever been to learn everything you possibly need to about football management.
Maybe you should put a book together. Now, another fascinating chapter, and it's something that I've got to ask as a Newcastle fan. You went to Newcastle with Steve McLaren, and again, I think, although they're my club and I love them dearly, it can be an intimidating place to be a player and management, I would imagine. So, how constantly in the spotlight, because everyone wants to know what's going on. Everyone's got an opinion. There's 52,000 opinions. What was it like, that period? Was it difficult?
Oh, it's tough. It's I've got to say, I worked at Rochdale, which was tough because we didn't have any money. We had very small crowds, but they all still expect to be the top of the league and everything. I worked at Carlisle United under CVA. Really, really difficult. But Newcastle is the most difficult place I've ever worked. I've got to say, I was only there for 9 months. But I have to be honest with you, Pete. From the first time Steve McLaren said to me, "I want you to come to Newcastle," I thought, no, it's not a good place to go. Not that it's a magnificent football club. We've got so much history to it. And obviously, being from Carlisle, I know all about the Newcastle United story, so I know lots about it. But it was, just from the outside looking in, it didn't look the right place to be. It looked as if there was all sorts of issues going on. And when I got in there, I just realised straight away it was a problem. And I have to be honest, when Steve McLaren, I started on a Thursday, so I had 2 sessions Thursday, 1 session Friday, 1 session Saturday, and afterwards Steve said to me, come on then, tell me what you think. And I said, Mackie, you don't want to know. And he went, I do. That's why I've asked you, because, to be honest, I said, we're screwed. We really are screwed here. I said, this is a real problem. I said, this isn't something you're going to change quickly. This is going to take a long time. We had a really, really difficult changing room, real problems in the changing room. All sorts of issues about the way the club want the manager to deal with the media, which puts the manager on a back foot straight away. Steve McLaren wanted to open the doors for all the media, wasn't allowed. It's all run that way. And Steve tried his best to do it. And also, I think Steve was on a hide into nothing to start with anyway, because he didn't take the job when it allegedly got offered it in the previous November, December time. He felt as though he should be loyal to Derby County and stay and finish it off for the job that we were there to do. He got all sorts of flack. The fans weren't having him from minute one. As much as he tried to change the image of it and try and change the culture of the club, we were just banging our head against a brick wall. And it was difficult. Still a fantastic experience, but I've got to say, standing in that technical area, Steve used to always sit up in the director's box to start with, and I'd be the one at the front of the technical area. Standing in that technical area, it was a massive space to be stood in on my own when 52,000 people are booing you. It was very tough, but a great experience for me. But I've got to say, I wasn't surprised when I got the sack. I wasn't surprised when they made the decision. And really, I say this to people that, unfortunately, and I always say we, because when Steve McLaren went in and asked me to go, it's us together. We were together. Me and him were a team together. Steve was the one who got the majority of the flack, but I felt responsible for that as well, because I was with him. I was his assistant.
Yeah.
But when we eventually got the sack and they brought Rafa in, I felt as though we had to be the ones who took it as low as it felt at the time, for the club to realise that they need to let a football person make the football decisions. And I think Rafa Benitez was allowed to do that. There was things that we were asking to do inside the football club that were refused, that I found out that Rafa started on I think I'm right in saying he started on a Friday afternoon. By the Monday, 2 of the 4 or 5 things that we wanted to do were done for the Monday when Rafa came into the building. So we unfortunately had to take it as low as it was, and we got all of the flack thrown at us. But it was for the good of Newcastle, because Rafa was then allowed to do the things he did. And listen, what Rafa did was magnificent. And I'm not saying we would have done that, but I don't think we were ever going to be given the power to do what Rafa was allowed to do in the end.
Very interesting. I've got one more question for you before we let you get back to your modern day and what preps for the weekend. One of your old clubs, Man City, it seems, to having looked at them toward the end of last season, definitely the beginning of this season, they haven't got a settled back four, Paul. I think, do they need to? I mean, it's the $1 million question, but surely they need a Vincent Kompany type player. A lot of people are saying they may have one in Ruiz, the new signing, but it's definitely a problem for Pep, isn't it? I mean, can you see them? I can't see them sort of, until they sort that out, can they challenge Liverpool again?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It really is. I mean, you look through all of the top sides, all of the top Premier League sides, and if you use Liverpool from last season, everybody talks about the catalyst for them being successful was Virgil van Dijk. And I've got to say, I probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, again, going back to Newcastle, it's quite interesting, but we had discussions about bringing Van Dijk in from Celtic. And the recruitment department felt he wasn't good enough to play for Newcastle. So we didn't actually go down the line. But anyway, I'm digressing there. So anyway, if you look at them, Virgil van Dijk was a major player in their side, and their solidity at the back, the number of clean sheets they kept was a big part of it. You talk about top sides now. So you've got Chelsea, desperately trying to find a centre back pairing that's going to make them successful. Manchester United are talking, we cannot find a partner for Harry Maguire, and some people, strangely enough, even questioning whether Harry Maguire's right, which is incredible. But you've got them, you've got Arsenal have been desperately trying to find a defensive partnership, because it's the rock of your team. If you've got a really strong goalkeeper, which City, Arsenal seem to have now, Manchester United have, as much as David De Gea is having problems. They've all, and Liverpool with their keeper, they've all got top goalkeepers. It's getting those two centre backs or three centre backs, wherever teams are playing. Getting that partnership is massive for it, because in our game now, you look at the players that are the forward players. There's so many exciting attacking players around. But if you can have a defence that is going to be really solid and secure, that's the base. That's the base. You know, we're talking about getting a number of clean sheets this season to be successful. We want to score, you know, we want to try and get 2 goals a game if we possibly can, which will take us up to 80 goals. But you need to be getting clean sheets if you want to be successful. And a good goalkeeper and a centre-back pair is the big thing for that. So I don't know where they are. I've got to be honest with you. I'm not sure. You know, Manchester City are scouring the world, I'm quite sure. And with a manager like Pep Guardiola, they've certainly got the right coaching and the right infrastructure to attract that type of player. But the question is, where are they, and can they bring them in? And I think it's a fight that a lot of clubs are going to be having, trying to find that centre back. But hopefully for City's sake, they can. Hopefully for Liverpool's sake, Van Dijk is not going to be out as long as everybody's talking at the moment, and he can come back and slot straight in. Because I think we've got a brilliant league over here with the Premier League. It'd be nice if it's a bit closer than it was last season, and there's maybe 3 or 4 teams who are all involved in it.
Yeah, it's definitely a watch this space, as it is for the Pirates. Bristol City will be watching with interest this weekend, and wish you and the boys all the very best. We will ask that you come on toward the end of the season and just keep us updated of how things are going. Ladies and gents from Hollywood Balls, Paul Simpson.
Thank you.